The Gospel of Mark, chapter 6. Have you ever found yourself feeling like you're not enough? Maybe in your relationships, work, or faith? Or maybe you've experienced rejection, faced overwhelming challenges, or wondered if you have the strength to keep going. In the Gospel of Mark, chapter 6, there is timeless wisdom for all of us, providing insights into how we can trust God when life feels uncertain, how to persevere when the odds are stacked against us, and how to move forward even when we feel we have little to offer. Let's dive into this chapter and discover how its powerful lessons can transform our everyday lives. Jesus rejected in his hometown. After performing miracles in other regions, Jesus returns to Nazareth, his hometown, to preach and teach. Yet instead of being welcomed as a prophet or celebrated for his wisdom, he is met with doubt and criticism. The people of Nazareth remember him as the carpenter's son, and they couldn't believe that someone so familiar to them could be the Messiah. Because of their lack of faith, Jesus is unable to perform many miracles there, apart from healing a few sick people. Now, what do we take from that? Sometimes the hardest place to be recognized for your gifts and potential is among those who know you best. Your family, friends, or maybe community. And like Jesus, you may experience rejection, not because you're unworthy, but because people can't see past who you used to be. Their doubt doesn't diminish your worth or calling. This passage reminds us that rejection is not a reflection of our potential or value. Jesus didn't let their beliefs stop him from fulfilling his purpose, and neither should we. Keep moving forward in your calling, even when others fail to see it. Jesus sends out the 12 disciples. Now, in this section, Jesus sends out his 12 disciples to preach repentance, cast out demons, and heal the sick. He tells them to take nothing for the journey except a staff. No bread, no bag, no money, relying completely on God's provision and the hospitality of others. He instructs them to stay in homes that welcome them and to move on from places that do not. Now, what do we take from that? Well, this story is a beautiful reminder of the importance of trusting in God when he sends us out into the world. There are times when we feel unprepared, like we don't have enough resources, skills, or support to accomplish the tasks we're called to do. But Jesus asks us to step out in faith, trusting that God will provide what we need along the way. Now, it also teaches us about the power of simplicity and humility. Sometimes less is more. When we strip away distractions and rely on God, we allow him to show up in powerful ways. He often works best when we come to the end of our own abilities and depend entirely on him. The death of John the Baptist. In the Gospel of Mark chapter 6, it also recounts the story of John the Baptist's execution. John, a righteous man and prophet, had spoken out against King Herod's unlawful marriage to Herodias, his brother's wife. Herodias harbored a deep grudge against John and wanted him dead. Herod, though disturbed by John's words, did respect him and didn't want to harm him. However, during the feast, Herodias' daughter danced for Herod and pleased him so much that he promised her anything she wanted. Herodias seized the moment, instructing her daughter to ask for John's head on a platter. Reluctantly, Herod fulfilled the request. Now, John the Baptist's death is a sobering reminder of the cost of speaking truth and standing for righteousness. Sometimes, following God's path means facing opposition, and in John's case, it meant sacrificing his life. The lesson here is about courage and conviction. John stood firm in his beliefs, even knowing it could lead to his death. And in our own lives, we are called to speak the truth and live out our faith with boldness, even when it's unpopular or dangerous. This passage challenges us to ask, what are we willing to stand for? And how much are we willing to sacrifice to follow God's will? The feeding of the 5,000. Now, this is one of the most famous miracles in the Bible. After a long day of teaching and healing, Jesus and his disciples find themselves with a massive crowd of over 5,000 people. The disciples are concerned because it's late and the people are hungry. They suggest sending the crowd away to buy food, but Jesus tells them, "You give them something to eat." The disciples are puzzled. How could they possibly feed such a large crowd with only 5 loaves of bread and 2 fish? Yet Jesus takes what little they have, gives thanks, breaks the bread, and miraculously multiplies it to feed everyone. Now, not only does the entire crowd eat, but there are 12 baskets of leftovers. Now, this miracle teaches us that no matter how little we think we have, God can multiply our offerings beyond what we can imagine. Often we feel like we're not enough. We don't have enough time, energy, resources, or talent. But Jesus asks us to bring what we do have, however small it may seem, and trust him to multiply it. Now, this applies not only to material resources, but also to our spiritual gifts and abilities. God can take what little we offer and use it to bless others in ways we never thought possible. The key is our willingness to give what we have, trusting in his power to make it more than enough. Jesus walks on water. After feeding the 5,000, Jesus sends his disciples ahead of him by boat while he goes up a mountain to pray. As night falls, the disciples struggle against the wind and waves. In the middle of the night, they see Jesus walking on the water toward them, and they are terrified, thinking he is a ghost. But Jesus immediately speaks to them, saying, "Take heart, it is I. Do not be afraid." He climbs into the boat, and the wind dies down. Despite witnessing this incredible miracle, the disciples are still slow to fully understand who Jesus is and what he is capable of. Now, this passage speaks directly to those of us who feel overwhelmed by the storms of life. Whether we're facing financial struggles, health issues, broken relationships, or emotional turmoil, Jesus is with us in the storm. When the disciples were terrified, Jesus didn't criticize them for their fear. He reassured them with his presence. Often, we think that faith means never being afraid, but true faith is about recognizing that Jesus is with us, even in the middle of our fears. He may not take away the storm right away, but his presence brings peace and strength to endure it. Like the disciples, we may not always fully understand God's plan, but we can trust that he is with us in every trial. Now, the Gospel of Mark, chapter 6, offers us invaluable lessons that can reshape our lives. It teaches us that rejection, doubt, and scarcity are all part of our journey, but none of these can stop God's plan for us. Whether it's facing the disbelief of others, stepping out in faith with little, standing up for what's right even when it's costly, or walking through life's storms, we can trust that God is with us and will provide everything we need. Now, as you leave here today, consider these questions. Where in your life are you experiencing rejection, and how can you keep moving forward in faith? What small offering can you bring to God, trusting that he will multiply it? And in your personal storms, will you look for Jesus walking toward you, ready to calm your fears? Remember, you are never alone. God is present in the rejection, in the provision, and in the storms. With him, You are enough, and you have everything you need to fulfill your purpose. Keep stepping out in faith, knowing that the God who fed the 5,000, walked on water, and raised the dead is the same God who is with you today. Keep this in your heart. Your journey is part of a greater story that God is writing right now, and his plans for you are more than you can ever possibly imagine. Thank you. Tomorrow we'll discuss the Gospel of Mark, chapter 7. Thanks.